All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. Tonight, I'm doing something a little different. A lot of you guys ask me what kind of things I do when I'm not recording, and normally this kind of stuff I don't record, but this was kind of interesting, and I'm going to bring you along. I'm helping out a friend of mine who's working on some projects for his business, and he had a little issue that he needed help with. He also does laser engraving and laser cut things, signs, and so forth. You've probably heard me talk about him, CNC Trophy Shop here in Clanton. Well, Tim over at CNC called me and said he had an issue with a project he was working on, and this is what it was, guys. This is a tag that he is using for a multi-layered project. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but the holes on the blanks that he got, the holes ain't where they need to be. So this is the acrylic outer part that he's going to be engraving. This is basically just a metal backer that everything will be adhered to. Well, that's a problem when you can't get the screws through it. So because Tim does have a Thunderbolt machine, he can cut the acrylic, but he couldn't cut the aluminum. So he asked me if I could do it, and guys, it was a mystery, but we're going to try. So if that's something you're into, stick around, and we're going to see if we can't cut this aluminum tonight. All right, guys, so a lot of you are probably like, Clack, you can't cut aluminum with a laser, and you would be right, guys. But you can cut it with a CNC, or so I had been told. And when Tim asked me about the project, I don't like telling people no, but this was, guys, just for the record, this is a laser and CNC job that I'm doing tonight. The main file, I'm gonna show you the screen capture, and kind of walk you through the process of how I went about creating the file. But I basically have created myself a template, which I may use in the future with some acrylic, that mimics the tags. I use the acrylic one that Tim needs the holes to line up with so that I know how to modify these guys. And in the process, I made myself a jig for the CNC to allow me to insert these things into a jig and just rip them out. I've done most of them. I've got like 3 left. And I thought about it, and I was like, I bet these guys would like to see this process and kind of see how I got it set up. But so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through the computer part of it, and then once we get through that, I'm going to take you over to CNC, show you how I got it set up, and let you watch a couple of them in action. So let's get started. All right, guys, and there's probably better ways of doing this, and I wound up kind of redoing the holes after it was all said and done. In VCarve, but this is an easy way. If you don't have VCarve to modify files, you can get really close. Now sometimes there's going to be some testing, but basically what I've did is I've used the camera to capture the shape, and I'm just drawing a box around the edge of the shape to try to mimic how big it is in Lightburn. Now, depending on your camera calibration, the thickness of the material, there's some variables that can cause some variations, but it's really handy when you're trying to design something to be able to kind of see the beginning product and what you want it to look like and just work through it from there. So we'll just kind of go through this a little bit faster here. I'm tracing everything out and just adding circles and squares and all that kind of stuff to try to create this shape. I'm going to go on over here in just a second, and I'm going to add a couple of squares, just small squares in the middle, and then a couple of circles to make that into that shape that's on the material. So what I've done basically is created a little box and a circle, and now I'm just going to take the circle and I'm just going to replicate it because I know the spacing from center to center because it is exactly the same as that box. So I'm just going to set that up and make sure to get my spacing the way that I want it, which should be 7 millimeters. And once I replicate that thing over, it's going to automatically line everything up for me. And that'll give me the ability to just use the addition function over here on the booleans to make it look like that shape. Now it's going to need some resizing, but basically that just keeps me from having to go through it with the node editor trying to set that up. And like I said, I had to make some adjustments once I got it to the CNC, but this gives me a good SVG going into VCarve to get this thing started. And basically all I'm going to do is create 4 of those or 3 more of those and just add them to everywhere there's supposed to be a hole. So once I got the outline of the tag done, I went and got myself a piece of material. And what I'm doing here, guys, is I want to create a jig that I can take and attach to my spoil board with screws to kind of hold this tag in place. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm just basically outfitting this thing to work as a jig once I cut it out. And that will enable me to repeat the process with all these tags without having to worry about placement or whatever. I'll be using 4.5 millimeter Luan. All it is, the only purpose of the Luan is to just kind of hold the tag down. And I'm going to try to set the speeds and stuff so that maybe it won't fly off of there. So I send the job over to EnclosureZilla and get it started. And I'll let y'all see a little bit of this and fast forward. All right, guys, so over at Vectric, the way that I'm going to do this is I'm basically going to bring an SVG file in that I exported out of Lightburn, and I'm going to do so by creating a new file. Now, on this file, and I'm having to redo this, so a lot of my settings are already in here, lucky me. Even though this is a new file, the settings are already here. So the dimensions of the tag itself is 304 by 152, and according to my cheap calibers, it's 0.65 millimeters thick. So I'm going to be setting it to material surface, and I want my 0 to be in the bottom left corner because I plan on utilizing the little dead space where that curve is there as my 0. That'll also give me a reference that'll be easy to find on my material. And I probably should have put that in the file for the laser file of the jig that I made, but I didn't think about it until it was too late. So now that I've got my work area the way I want it, and it is exactly the size of the tag, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go File and Import Vector, because I saved it as an SVG. And this is my CNC file, so I'm not going to be in that folder. I saved this as a laser file over here in my laser stuff. And we're going to be looking for the file of license plate, which is here. And there's the SVG that we exported. I'm going to bring that in. Now, it threw it over here in the middle of nowhere. I will not be using the outer line because that's the line that I'm going to be using as a jig. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to come over here, grab this guy, and drag it into the work area. And it should snap in the middle. So it did. Now, on my little jig, this is right here is where I made those lines, and where those lines intersected, that's where I set my 0 at. And having this little curve here actually afforded me having some flat space up here out above the work area to do it. Now, I did set the Z-axis on the material when I was getting ready to cut. So that's one thing you got to be mindful of. Using this jig, you're going to have to set the Z-axis using the probe here in the working area of the material. Now, all I did, once I got it in here, guys, I did come back and do a little bit of tweaking and adjustments because it wasn't exactly perfect. But basically, you would go in here, select these 4 little holes right here, and I'm still learning this stuff, so bear with me. And then I set my depth, but even though my caliber said that the material was 0.65, I went ahead and did 0.55 because I didn't want to go into my spoil board too much. Like I said, I was afraid with that upcut bit, I might drag some wood chips up there and pull that thing loose from my jig. And I was running the Zero Flute bit, and I've got some cheap bits that are made by Speetool that you can buy on Amazon because I don't want to tear up any expensive ones until I learn what I'm doing. So that's the bit that I'm running, is the Zero Flute upcut end mill 1/4 inch. And I've got it set to where it's only diving, you know, really, really small steps. I even set the step over to 20%. To try to avoid, you know, any kind of tear out or binding or anything like that. And it seemed to do pretty good. Now, the spindle speed, I just ran it on the second setting on my Makita. I do have a chart, but I find that number 2 on the Makita seems to work with most everything. And this was an experiment anyway. I slowed the speed rate down to 30 and the plunge rate down to 4 in order to do this job. And then once you put all that in there, guys, and if you're used to the software, you know how it works. Go in here and calculate it. I don't know why it did 2 of them. go in here and calculate the work area. And I like to always, for some reason, and this is just something that I really, really do like about VCarve, I like to go in here and just preview them and see where they're going to go, just to make sure nothing crazy or unexpected is happening. And because I do have my depth of cut sets different than the thickness of the material, they're not going to go all the way through. In order for me to get them to go all the way through, I would have to go in and set this back to 0.65, which is fine. I mean, it'll do it either way. So we're going to reset that. Just let you see this. So if I set it to 0.65, it's going to show what it's going to look like. Now, of course, the tags do have rounded corners, but you get the idea. And so then, if you're not familiar with the software, I'll go ahead and run you through this because I know I got folks like Klein that's trying to learn how to work VCarve. You can go over here and take a little cheat and see how long it's going to take for that cut to run. And that's one reason why, as I was cutting them, I went back and changed the depth of cut. It's because it was taking a little longer and it was actually going into spoil board a little more than I wanted to. So I went back and changed the thickness and it only made it take like 2 minutes once I changed the thickness. And so you can kind of preview that, get an idea of what the time is going to be. And then all you got to do is hit save the toolpath. And the way I've got mine set up is I have a little shared drive over on the machine that runs the CNC. And I just send my designs over there and execute them there with Candle software that came with the Genmitsu. And then the next part, guys, is the actual cutting. So let's go see some sparks fly. Or maybe not. Maybe there won't be sparks flying. All right, guys, so this is where the cutting is going to take place. All right, this is my Sane Smart. This is the new 6050 that I just recently got. I've been playing with it. I had been wanting to try some aluminum. I actually went out and bought some aluminum blocks. So when Tim asked me if I could do this job, well, I'd already been studying the process, and so I thought, why not? Now, I will tell you this. These things are really, really thin, so this is not like we're machining anything significant. They're literally like 1/2 millimeter thick. This is some very thin aluminum, so I felt like it'd be a job that we could do, and I've done all of them except for these two. I showed you the process of how I set everything up in Lightburn, moved it over to VCarve, but once we got to the physical machine, there was a process that I had to do. Because the way I built the file for the tag, I did it two different reasons. I made the file with rounded edges so that I could actually set my 0 to be the corner of the square here. And I'll try to get you a little bit better video of this as we go forward. But I've created this cutout, and that's how I made the other little wooden tag. And this cutout allows me to take these and place them in here really, really snug so that they can't go anywhere. The only fear that I had was that it would snatch them out because I am using a 0 flute upcut bit, but I'm only going 5/1000ths at a time for the passes just to be sure that I don't hang the bit up and cause it to snatch the material up, because it is lightly held in here by the fit that it fits inside this little jig that I made with the laser. So I'm gonna move the camera around where you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna get this thing loaded up and we're gonna send the file. All right, before we get started, guys, any of you wanna ask, I didn't mention it, but in case you haven't seen any of my other videos, I am running Candle as the deployment G-code sender for the machine. All right, so the way that I've got my little jig here, this tag literally has to be kind of pressed in this jig to hold. I made it very, very tight on purpose, and because the material is so thin, I'm actually kind of marking the spoil board. I'm going a couple of thousandths past the bottom of the material, but not bad. And for what I had to do here, basically, because the way I designed it in VCarve was that the corner, the material in VCarve is exactly the same size as the tag. And I did that so that my 0 would be right here in the corner of where these two straight lines come out. So I probably could have done it in a laser, and if I'd have thought about it, I would have. It would have been much easier to have just extended this line and made myself a little crosshair right there. But I didn't do that, so I did it with a pencil and my trusty little ruler here, and I've made myself a 0-0 on this panel that I have inserted in here as a jig. That way I know that that's where I need to be zeroed in order for my operation to run the way I want it to through the G-code. So once I got that locked in there, made sure it's good and level, My relay is out. I got another one coming tomorrow, so I'm still having to manually turn my router on. But I'm gonna turn this on, guys, and I'm gonna move over to Candle and send the file. Get that one done. For safety, I make sure I got my router off because I do have to kind of pry these out a little bit. Just kind of got to hook your fingernails under the edge and pull it out. Take this one out. Got some nice clean holes, no rip outs, no bends in the material. And guys, for you experienced guys, I know I could probably go much faster. I could probably dive much further, but I'm just taking my time not to mess up Mr. Tim's blanks. Once I do that, because I am moving thousandths at a time and this is very thin material, I make sure I clean my workspace thoroughly. And then I drop another one in. And I probably could actually sandwich 2 or 3 of these things together, put them in here and do them, but I'm being careful, guys. Like I said, I don't know how many Tim has of these things left, and I do not want to be responsible for tearing up all this stock. He did donate one to the cause if I did have to, figure out my settings. But I went really, really slow and just worked my way up to get it the way I wanted it. So let me reach across you here. I'm gonna hit OK because that job has completed. Turn the spindle back on. And I'm gonna send it again. All right, guys, so that worked out. I got all of them done now and managed to save all of his inventory, no problems. And like I said, hot off the presses, I have moved the holes over. The holes in these were different shape than the one in the acrylic tag as well. And I'm not sure if he got these from the same vendor or what, but it is pretty awesome that was able to help him out with this and get these things straightened out the way they needed to be. I'm not real sure that any of these tags are symmetrical. When I was measuring them and trying to lay everything out, there were some variations on both the metal tags as far as the hole spacing as well as the acrylic. But it seems that at least the test piece that he gave me to use to design the file, I have got these holes where they need to be. So I'm just hoping that this works out. But at least now I have settings for really thin aluminum for the Genmitsu 6050. All right, guys, so I'm gonna call that a success. I'm gonna try to line these up in my hand best I can. But yes, the holes are a little oblong now as far as the added hole that I put in there, but I can't fill those holes in. But I did enable Mr. Tim to be able to take his acrylic tags that he has and utilize these guys. So that was the big thing, is he didn't want to waste the materials. And you can see there, guys, I can see you through the hole. And that is the way it's supposed to look. And you can see here, you can see how far off the holes were. And it was really hindering Tim from putting the tags together. But now, thanks to a little creative laser and CNC working together, I managed to build the file, get it on the machine, jig it in place, and I actually got the settings right without launching one of these things across the shop. So I'm calling that a win in my book. And for all you pros that want to tell me how many things I did wrong, I don't doubt it, okay? Learning, new guy here. But I think that's pretty awesome. I think that's pretty good. and I'm going to continue to learn, and hopefully one day I'll be as good as you guys are. So until next time, be safe and have a good day.